My name is Rich Waller. I'm with Hayden Homes Mortgage. I'm really glad to be here and glad to see you guys. As far as the tax credit, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm trying to put myself into your shoes as an agent going out there getting a sale. How do I use the tax credit to attract buyers and to help them with a buying decision? So I want to talk about a lot of, as you know, before the tax credit was mainly geared towards first-time home buyers. And as of November 7th, they switched it over to repeat buyers. And we're going to define that. But I want to start with a picture of who's renting out there and what that demographic is like. Because I think it's key when you're putting together a sales presentation to know where your buyers are coming from and how can we use the tax credit to fill in the picture for them. I think a lot of it is education. As first-time homebuyers are coming out, they have so many questions, and if we can educate them to see how they can make that gap or bridge that gap from renting into owning. So I'll go through these slides really quick and then get kind of to the meat of it as far as the tax credit. A lot of Americans out there are renting nearly a third, and when you look at the statistics, they're pretty widespread. It's not like they're fitting into one particular category. But then another one that stood out to me was the single professionals. And I think this is a good demographic to go after when you're looking at sales and you're looking at farm lists. Home ownership, I think everybody knows out there they want to go for the American dream of owning their home. And a lot of people say that. With the research shows that a lot of people say 70% of them want to own a home. So how are we motivating that group of people to actually, or I think educating would be a better word, to make that step into that transition. Let's talk about what renting is a little bit. I like to show the numbers to my clients. If I get a first-time home buyer, the numbers are really powerful when they think, oh my gosh, I'm renting for $900 a month. I can't afford a mortgage that's $1,100, $1,200. There's just no way. Well, actually, let me show you how. Okay, so a couple of assumptions, and for this presentation, I'm using a home down in Applegate, in Veneta, at the Hayden Homes community, it's about 1,400 square feet and would generally rent for about $950. I tried to put it on the high side, just in case I know people probably could find something less for $900 or $850, but I wanted to show how these numbers are actually pretty powerful. So obviously rent goes up a couple throughout time. And the total rent, and if you throw in renter's insurance, for $950 increased over time, that's what you're going to get your total, that's $62,000. So there's how it breaks out. And if I show these to my clients, they go, oh my gosh, that's right. I'm going to be, over time, my rent is going to be going up. Well, check this out, Mr. or Mrs. Borrower. Your payment when you get a mortgage stays the same. Pretty strong selling point. Average rent over a 5-year period, $1,050. So keep that number in mind. And yeah, by the way, the landlord thanks you for making their mortgage payment for them. So here's where it starts to get interesting. The government makes a lot of incentives, or has a lot of incentives, in order to make home ownership appealing. So we're looking at this home, $174,990. If I do, that property is eligible for the USDA rural product, and that's what I want to use for this presentation because it shows it even more. It kind of narrows that gap. So payment is just the principal and interest, estimated taxes and insurance, and then here's what I do. I show, okay, if you're making a principal and interest payment, you're actually a forced savings plan or reducing your principal loan amount by $205 a month. So then the tax benefits, I'm assuming a 25% tax bracket. That's generally what I see for first-time home buyers. So their actual cost, $758. The savvy Mr. or Mrs. Borrower says, well, that's not really my payment, $758. I don't feel that because that $205 is going towards my principal. Well, let's talk about that. So I did some calculations for over a five-year span, and again, showing that 25% tax bracket. So we have a tax benefit of $241. So then I take the total PITI minus the $241 and say, well, look at this. Your actual payment is $963. What are you paying in rent right now? What are you going to pay in rent over the next 5 years? So you're actually paying less to own a home. Okay, but again, savvy Mr. Borrower or Mrs. Borrower says, I'm not going to see the cash flow is the same for me. Well, why don't you think about this? What about changing your W-4 form if you're salaried or hourly? What about getting less deductions because you know now you're going to have that tax benefit when it comes to file your tax returns? So now you've increased your cash flow to make this bigger payment, what feels like it, and the net benefit over a 12-month period or when it comes time to file your taxes is the same. Does that make sense? And a lot of people, the light comes on for them at that point. They go, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could do that. Okay, so hopefully that paints a picture for at least the first-time home buyer. Hey, you can own a home. Tell me what you're renting at. What's your price point? What are you thinking? Let's talk and figure out what that payment's going to be. So then here is where this comes together with the tax credit. My goal here today is to show you, okay, how can we combine these arguments, so to speak, for lack of a better word, to make a sales presentation and then help them make that buying decision. So here's what we're going to cover. The extended deadline, what the new dates are. I think you guys, that's pretty general knowledge. The income limits, and then what a first-time home buyer and repeat buyer means according to the IRS. I really like what they decided to do. This last November, it seemed everybody procrastinates, right? Or at least that's the mentality. Or what happens is, hey, I know a deadline. I'm going to work towards that deadline. And November just became a nightmare for the lenders and especially for the rural development. How many of you had a rural loan that was in the rural development office in November? I think for Lane County, it stretched out to over 20 business days, and just people were pulling their hair out. And we, as lenders, we anticipated 8 to 10 business days, and then we got posted. It seemed like every week we got deeper into November. It's like, well, it's 15 days now. Well, it's 16 to 18 days, and it was just maddening. So I really like what they've decided to do with the program. Make sure your contract is written by April 30th. You got to have a fully executed contract. Then that has to close by June 30th. And that's really important when they're defining what a closing is. It's your settlement statement. I gave this presentation right in November, so a lot of it, at that time, if you remember, everybody was asking, oh my gosh, I have this contract and it was written prior to November 6th. Is it still eligible? They did grant, it just was seamless. It went right across. I don't know if anybody still has an offer that was written prior to November 6th, but so then I want to touch on that again. It's got to be a closing for a qualified purchase. So that person, when they go to file their tax returns or do an amendment, they've got to have that HUD-1 settlement statement. That is the key that the feds are going to be looking for. So it's got to close by June 30th.